Hello, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Yes, I've been planning this for some time. I've done a bonus episode before, but the reasoning for doing this episode and future bonus episodes is that there's a lot of episodes that have been pulled. Some of that has been because I just felt the quality wasn't there in the earlier days, like the shows just aren't worth listening to. And I know obviously over time you aim to improve, you aim to get better. So you should kind of embrace that journey. And for the most part, I do. But it's all about having a content library, archive, if you like, of content that I feel stands the test of time. I remember years ago working in marketing and coming across this term evergreen content, this idea that your content can stand the test of time and can be relevant for years and years to come. And when I look at the shows I'm doing now and the shows I did in the past and stuff like that, there's some gaps there. I want to kind of fill that out a little bit. I also want there to be, options across the spectrum of the shows that I've done. So, we're fast approaching episode 300, and I don't want there to be just a lack of older content, because it's all very impressive getting to these higher numbers. But as I'm moving forward, I'm learning to kind of dial it back. I have plans to kind of do less episodes, but make them more impactful, make them mean something a bit more, and to be honest, have more fun with it. For the longest time, I've been doing, one episode a week. At one point in the first 2 years of the show, I was doing two episodes a week, which was just brutal. And I feel like it will be interesting to try and do less shows, but just do like pop-up episodes every now and again, like a bonus podcast where we talk about a particular topic, as we will today. And also just kind of moving around, try other different shows. Obviously, I have my show on Patreon, Life with Christian Reeve. Go check that out, patreon.com/Christian Reeve. I'm trying to look at the identity of that show. I'm also trying to look at other potential shows I could do and just kind of get remotivated, if that's the word, just kind of gain a newfound appreciation for what I do and try different things. Shout out to Vilma, who's always giving me good ideas. I'm always looking for opportunities to learn and grow and try different things. And I've been doing this for a long time. And hopefully, this leads us into today's topic. I've been doing this solidly now for about 5 years, I believe. So I started in 2019, started throwing out content on YouTube, various different series. I started getting into acting, started writing music again. And I'd say over the last 3 or 4 years, everything's kind of come together. And now I pursue all things creative. And I'm not successful by any means, but I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, and I think I can safely say I've become a better content creator. I know obviously my view count and stuff like that doesn't really speak volumes. If anything, it says, oh, this is an unsuccessful creator. But then there's other ways you can look at these things as well. Not many people can say they've done a podcast for 4 years. Not many people can say they've done nearly 300 episodes. And not many people can say they've interviewed people all around the world. Some big names, some university professors, actors, filmmakers, artists, you name it. I've had it on the show. And it's incredible that I've been able to interview those people, talk to those people, and also just have these really amazing conversations, these inspiring conversations. And it's made me think a lot about what success actually means, what it means to different people, and also the obsession with trying to be relevant, with relevancy, and this idea of falling off, and just like how quick fame actually is these days. And there's a few examples I want to highlight today to talk about this obsession with relevancy that we have on the internet now. So the thing that compelled me to do this particular podcast was that I came across Isaac HP, I think his YouTube name is. Really, really popular content creator, does fantastic, just crazy videos. And now he started doing documentaries, and I really recommend them. They're really, really good sort of sit down documentary conversations with people. And he did a conversation with a guy called Bevo, who is quite notorious on the internet for good and for bad. And, they spoke a lot about relevancy, and it got me thinking this idea of how the younger generations now, and older too, are obsessed with being relevant. But this idea of relevancy is not really a new concept. The term maybe is kind of a new thing that's being used and thrown around in our general kind of vocabulary now, especially as it pertains to the internet. But this obsession with wanting to be relevant and remaining relevant has always existed, particularly in the age of the celebrity. If you look at musicians such as Madonna, for example, she's always trying to constantly reinvent herself and stay famous, stay popular, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a big difference between pursuing something because you love it, because you have this artistry in you and you want to showcase that and you want to spread messages and just put good content out there into the world versus an obsession with staying famous. And I'm not saying particularly that she's doing that. I'm just saying, as an example, she's been famous for a very, very long time. And it begs the question, what's good enough for a person? What's good enough? What's an appropriate level of success? If you're constantly seeking fame, if you're always worrying about the algorithm and how many views you have and doing bigger and better content, where's the limit? Where does it end? What's good enough for you? Maybe it's never good enough. I've heard people like Logan Paul, for example, talk about money and saying things like he sees it as a competition. And, the more money he has, the more successful he is at winning that competition. And I look at content and views and the quest for relevancy is the same thing. It's like people just, you can never hang your hat on like, oh, I got a video and it got 5 million views and now I'm happy. It's like, no, I need to get more. I need to get paid more. I need to be known by more people. I need to do bigger and better content. I need to be more controversial. I think it's particularly interesting to look at content creators that got famous for being controversial or that they identified that controversy is that particular thing that drives up their views. And now they're caught in that spiral. See, once you delve into that world, your fans, your followers, even your haters are always clamoring for you to up the ante, to be more controversial than you were before, either to do something more controversial or say something more controversial or just do something that's shocking. Doesn't even necessarily have to be controversial. It just needs to be shocking in some way. And that shockingness, if you like, is the thing that will continue to get you views. A good modern example might be Paul Breach. For the longest time, he was being memed, people making videos about him, like updates on his life, the various antics that he was, partaking in. And, then people get bored after a while, and he had quite a long time in the kind of public sphere of consciousness, if you like, the sphere of relevancy, if you want to call it that, or the island of relevancy, to quote Roman Reigns. But from wrestling, I'm a big wrestling nerd. But the point is, he was always at the forefront of people's minds, for better or worse. A lot of the time, it would be for worse. People commenting on his life, people saying, "Oh, this isn't acceptable. This isn't acceptable. This, that, and the other." But the thing that you can't deny was that he was relevant for the longest time. People were talking about him. The more people are talking about you, the more people are viewing you, interacting with your content, the more relevant you are. Simply put, it's the same as just being famous. I've always found it fascinating when people say like, "Oh, this person isn't famous anymore," and it's like, well, technically, if you're known by a lot of people, then you're famous, right? I suppose you can argue if the younger generations don't know you, then you're not famous anymore. Maybe I would say you're less famous. I'd say you're still famous because people walking down the street might still recognize you, might still know you, but you're less famous than you were. But here's the thing with that, as I mentioned before, there's this obsession with like, oh, well, let's take music. If you're not well known anymore, then you're not a successful musician. Which I don't know. I disagree with that personally. I think that obviously, like I mentioned before, success is relative to the person. But generally, the best I've ever heard it laid out is when people say like, "Oh, if you're earning money from what you do, what you love to do, then you're a success." And I look at that like with acting, for example. I've been paid many times for acting on a consistent basis as well. And when I look at it like that, I'm like, great, I'm a successful actor. But then I look at the day to day sometimes and I'm like, well, I'm not doing this daily. I'm doing it here and there over the course of a year. Can I really say that I'm, a jobbing actor? Can I say I'm a successful actor? From an outsider's perspective looking in, probably not. Um, but again, really comes down to what you're trying to do, what you're aiming to do. I put a lot of pressure on myself, especially when I look at the people around me. I'm very bad at, comparing myself to others, which I know is not something you should do, but it can be incredibly frustrating when you're seeing everyone around you achieving a level of success that you wish you had. And when you look online, I mean, it's a barrage of different characters who have gotten fame from often something really silly or crazy or whatever, and then they've successfully managed to translate that into a career. Bevo is a really good example. I mean, he got famous for on TikTok for not swallowing his food, and that became like I guess like a meme. I guess you could say that. I don't really know. I don't really understand the younger generations when it comes to TikTok. I don't think I ever will. Um, but that's what he became famous for. And I think he was smart enough to realize I can transition this into something else. He still does those types of videos, but he also does other things and he's made a lot of money from it and he's trying to branch out. And something that's interesting about that is when you get known for one particular thing, it's often difficult for that person to then branch out into other things because your audience might be kind of like a aggressive towards that. There might be a backlash. Like you'll often see people say like, "Oh, how can you be doing those things? This is what you're known for. You're not known for doing this other stuff. Like, why are you doing this?" Like I've had it before. I've had people come into my live streams and be like, "Where's the guitar? Why are you not playing music?" And it's like, "Well, I do other things. You know, I'm allowed to do other things. I do what I want to do. And if that bothers you, then that's your problem. That's not mine." But it's interesting that mentality, that sense of entitlement that audiences have. And I think that when people are clamoring for relevancy, they're desperate for that attention, they'll do anything and they'll often give in to that audience. And I'm not saying that you should ignore what your audience says. I think often your audience is a good kind of barometer for what you're good at, what you're not good at, etc. Um, and they'll also just like you if people like a thing that you're doing, why wouldn't you feed into that? Of course, but you shouldn't let it dictate the things that you do because I feel like that's a dodgy road because then it's like, oh well, I'll do anything to please you, and it's like, but what about your happiness? I've seen so many successful content creators over the years, big ones, even massive YouTubers who get disillusioned, sick of what they're doing, they hate it, they don't want to do it anymore, but they get stuck in this kind of circle of having to make the same content, stuff that they're not passionate about. And there's no way of really getting out of that unless they turn their back on it, which is a big risk because they could lose everything. I'm all about taking risks in my life. That's what I live by. I think that's the whole point of life. There's no potential reward without risk in life, and everything in life comes with risk, whether you want to accept that or not. That's just how it is. And I feel like a lot of these big creators that get stuck in that rut, that's what you need to do. You need to take a risk and get out of it. And who knows, it might pay off. But until you do that, you're going to be stuck doing stuff that you hate, and and it's just going to be a relentless cycle, and it's not going to be good for your mental health. And we've seen that time and time again. But it just goes back to that original point. This quest for relevancy is just, in a way, kind of silly because things have changed a lot, especially in the last 10 years when it comes to the classic like 15 minutes of fame. I'd argue it's more like 15 seconds these days. um, just look at the Hoitu girl, for example. That was a viral video from a girl in the States who got interviewed on a night out, and it got memed and people had fun with it. And then it was really interesting to see the response to that because, she got a management deal. She's on podcasts. She's meeting all these big celebrities, or they all want to meet her. And you're seeing in comment sections people getting really annoyed by that. And I can understand, like, even I was a little bit like, oh, I'm working for years and I'm getting nowhere. And this girl says something silly in an interview one time, and boom, she gets a contract and she's made, right? But that's the reality of things sometimes. At the end of the day, none of us deserve anything. We work hard to get opportunities, and then we just hope that people recognize us for what we do, and want to give us a chance. Evidently, people saw something in her and gave her a chance, and she's running with it. Why wouldn't you? But the interesting thing is that people will get aggressive at that and attack that. And we've seen that online where people going, she doesn't deserve this. Oh, she's a one-hit wonder. Oh, it's like that episode of The Simpsons where Bart has a catchphrase and he says, I didn't do it. And like, then he gets washed up and now no one cares anymore. It's what I mean. This idea of relevancy has always existed. You have your fame, then it goes, now what? Well, I guess the point I'm trying to hit home with this episode is if you're in that kind of state of fear of relevancy, forget about that. Forget about trying to be relevant anymore and focus on the talents that you have. Focus on the things that you have to offer, that you want to offer, and also the things that you want to do, that you want to spend your time doing, and focus on that. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. If you have an established audience of people that only want to see you do one thing and you choose not to do that thing, it's going to bother people. It just is. I remember I changed things up on my Patreon a year or so ago, and I changed the payment structure. I felt that, and I spoke to several people about this, and I made the decision that I felt my content was worth a bit more than I was charging. And I still kept it affordable, but I chose to raise the prices, and inevitably people left. I remember one person, I wouldn't say getting annoyed online, but they said something to the effect of like, "Oh, why is this content not free? I don't have the money to pay for this." And I understood their concern there. I understood the frustration because I've wanted access to content creators and their premium content before, but wasn't able to afford it myself. And yeah, that sucks. But there's nothing wrong with a person trying to make a living from their content. A lot of time and effort goes into that. And it's not unreasonable to want to ask for a little bit of money for that. It's essentially it's a form of content, it's a service in a sense. It's not dissimilar to signing up for a streaming platform, but people see it differently online. Like I said, there's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of a sense of you owe me this, you owe me that, and if you don't give me this, then I just won't watch anymore. I won't be interested anymore. Blah blah blah. And like people bow into that. I see these YouTubers that have like millions of subscribers and they're getting upset because their latest videos don't have as many views. And it's like, I understand the frustration if this is your career and what you're trying to do, but you still have this huge platform. You still have all these core committed fans that are watching you. And every time you talk about not having enough followers, not having this, that, and the other, it diminishes it. It alienates the people that are watching. Because now those people are going to sit there and feel like, well, why am I watching this person when they don't appreciate me? Why should I bother? They clearly don't appreciate me watching, so maybe I just shouldn't watch anymore. And then you lose fans that way. I've made sure over the years to really thank the people that follow the hardcore committed people because it means a lot. And I have expressed my frustrations with not having more followers and how sometimes it can feel like you're putting all this work in for nothing. But I've always made sure to highlight the fact that the reason I keep doing what I do, amongst other reasons, but one of the key reasons that's kept me motivated is those people that are subscribed, that are watching, that are listening, that are supporting you and showing their support in so many different ways. Not everything has to be about money or views. Sometimes that can support can be a nice comment. They share one of your statuses. They liked your stream. These are all forms of support that are equally valuable. But the problem is in the modern society, there's too much of a focus on making as much money as possible, having as much clout and status as possible, being as relevant as possible. I think it's really mean sometimes when you see how people react to people 6 months later when they're not popular anymore. I'll give you another example. I remember there was a funny duo who started making videos. I can't remember their names, but it was a UK duo who started in COVID. It was really interesting because they were doing like these funny little videos in their school where they were like reviewing food items or something. It was just really like refreshing and different, and a lot of people reacted to it really well, and it was just fun. And you could clearly tell that they both had a bit of comedic prowess. Like it reminded me a lot of like young Ant and Dec, like similar vibes. And they kept running with it, running with it, running with it over the years, over about the course of a year or two. And after a while, they started to get less views and less content. And they tried different things, but the comments were like fell off hard, washed up, da, 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 da. And it's like, these are kids, man. They're like 16, 17, and you're just brutal with it, like jumping in there and just being like, fell off, I'm not relevant. And it's like, no one's safe. I've had people attack me for the content that I do over the years. I remember when I first started with the podcast, one of the comments that sat with me quite heavy was someone said, "No one wants to listen to your boring stories. All your stories undermine your guest stories." And it was brutal, and it actually changed the way I approached the podcast because I looked at it and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just focus on interviewing and talking less. In the end, there were people that wanted to hear my boring stories, and I made that into a Patreon show, and I share them on my live streams, and people do seem to want to hear them. But those negative comments sit with you, and they can affect you, and they can affect your mental health. And I do worry a lot for these bigger content creators that get it like ad nauseum from people, because in their minds, a lot of the time, the only thing that matters is maximum relevancy at all times, making sure you're on top of trends all the time, making sure that your content is always getting tons and tons of views and it's going viral. And it's like, it's not easy to do that. The modern attention span is so different. I mean, this term brain rot has come up in more recent years. And yeah, it's a form of content essentially. It's just content that doesn't really have any substance. It's just, as it sounds, brain rot. It's just stuff that you scroll through, you know. And the problem with that is that it doesn't stimulate the brain. It obviously activates your pleasure centers and you get like a kick out of it, a dopamine rush or whatever it is, but you don't learn anything. You don't grow from it. You don't connect with it. It's just, for want of a better word, crap. Um, and that's one reason why I've always stuck to my guns with my content and just not giving in to like, oh, I'll just do what everyone else is doing, because that's the problem. Doing what everyone else is doing, it just feeds that animal. It feeds these negative things that exist. And I think it's better to make like longer content. It's okay to have shorter content. I'm not attacking the people that do. There's a lot of great short form content out there. But the best short form content out there tends to be the stuff that people have spent a lot of time working on. You know, these comedy skits, these actors, musicians, artists out there just trying so hard to make a living and not really getting anywhere. Some do, some don't. But the ones that tend to are the ones that just have silly stuff, that have controversies. That, you know, those are the people that the algorithm pushes up because they get the most interactions, they get the most gifts, and also people want to see that. They want to see the absurd. It's like the modern circus in a sense. People want to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, but particularly the ugly, because for them it's like a weird sense of mystery and it's fascinating. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't somewhat fascinated by some of the craziness you see online sometimes, because I look at it from a psychological perspective. When you look at, say, the popularity of NPC streams, I'm sat there wondering, like, why are people interested in this? Why do they throw endless gifts at people who are just repeating the same words over and over and over and over again? You know, just going, thanks for the rose, thanks for the rose, thanks for the rose. Like, how is that entertainment? Maybe for some it is. I don't know. It is subjective after all. It's entertainment. I know there's people that absolutely hate listening to podcasts and think the idea is really boring of sitting listening to a guy talking for up to an hour. I get it. I have people that follow me that will never check out the show for that reason, and that's fine. But it's interesting, like when you compare those types of content, mine is an attempt to, you know, reach people, to educate, to inform, to provoke, to entertain. You know, it's I'm trying to make something that you could have on in the background and in your car maybe, or while you're working or whatever, and you're like, you know what, this is an interesting show, this got me thinking, this encouraged me to check out other things, or this encouraged me to go study, or this was just a fun thing to have in the background. It was soothing, it was a nice little distraction, or it was good background noise. But when you see these forms of content that are, you know, purely designed for the feed, they're just brain rot content that doesn't give you anything, doesn't provoke anything. It's just crap, as I mentioned before. It begs the question, why do they stay so relevant? Why are they so successful? Well, I think the reason for that, for a lot of the time, is because you've got a younger audience, and that audience tends to just be looking for the latest dopamine rush, the most absurd thing, the most silly thing, and they'll grow out of it. They will, because we all do. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say that we didn't have our own forms of brain rot. Saw a really, really good Memulous video the other day, which compared, was it Gen Z and Gen Alpha brain rot? And I'm a millennial, but I'm sort of like, so I was born in '93. So it's interesting. I'm like millennial, but a lot of the Gen Z stuff applies to me. And I look at it and I'm like, yeah, we had some really silly, ridiculous stuff in the early internet, like really just embarrassing and just silly. I remember there was one guy that I followed on YouTube called Make Me Bad 35 who was excellent, and he literally just used to do videos where he'd be like screaming at the camera with the high chipmunk voice. And I just, at the age of like 12, I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Now I'm looking back and I'm like, what? But it was fun at the time. And you can make this argument for the younger generations, like, oh, they'll grow up, they'll grow out of it, it won't matter. And it will just be a fun piece of nostalgia. But the problem, the difference is the attention span issue. They say that you should only put a certain time on your videos because people won't watch it past 20 seconds. And I'm like, really? You can't capture someone's attention for more than 20 seconds? That's worrying. I remember when I was at university, they said that lectures shouldn't really be past 20 minutes because that's the supposedly the average attention span for a human being. And I could see the mentality there. I'm sure we've all been in a 50 to an hour minute lesson. And what's up, police in Manchester? Woo woo. That's worrying. It's never a good thing. When you look at that, you're like, okay, it makes sense to break up sessions like that because it's a lot for the brain to take in. one of the reasons why I try to segment my shows, I try to slow it down, I try not to go off on too many tangents, is because I appreciate that the human brain needs some pacing, some time to digest the ideas. I always have like a wider point that I'm trying to make with what I do, but you got to segment it. You got to have like a narrative that's easy to follow so that it's not too erratic. A lot of this content you see online is far too erratic, and it's you can argue that that's the whole point, but I mean, I don't know, is that really good for the mind to be darting around all these different places? Surely it's better to make something that's easier to follow so that you can kind of go through it and slowly learn, slowly pick up stuff and move through it that way. Well, that's a new one. For the first time ever, when I was in the middle of a point, my Zoom just shut down. I've been paying for Zoom for years. Maybe I should stop using Zoom, to be honest, find something better. People say Riverside, but Riverside is terrible and it often loses your entire show. So sorry, Riverside, but I'm not willing to take the risk. This is why I always record everything as a backup in audio form online. Oh, sorry, it's not online. It's on a program on my computer, but I always make sure to download that because the video is yeah, it's the main thing I want to put online, but it's really is secondary. The audio is the important thing about the podcast. You want to keep that intact, otherwise you've just lost your entire conversation. And I remember one time my video actually did break down at the other person's side. Like it was fine during the show, but then when I downloaded it, none of the video was there, but I had the audio intact, so I still had the show. So it was all right. So we've saved it, but yeah, scary stuff. Now, where was I? Talking about relevancy online. It's difficult when you lose your trail of thought because you have this wider point that you're trying to make, and when you lose that, you've lost everything. And it can kind of derail a show. And to be fair, I did enter this show today winging it. I don't have a clear plan, a roadmap in particular. I just wanted to sit down and do a show about this. I thought it was an interesting topic. It is an interesting topic. And I feel that I've been doing podcasting and shows like this long enough now that I can kind of talk, shoot from the hip, as they say, and find a place where it works and it ties everything together. The only danger with doing something like this is that you don't want to repeat yourself too much. There's a few key points that I've mentioned in this show about relevancy and chasing and fame and everything. And I don't want to kind of be like a broken record and hammer them too much in the ground. I just want to give kind of clear examples from modern society that demonstrate an increasing problem that we have that I think we need to address in some shape or form. Um, it's interesting to me how people react to the things that I do, and everything is based on status. So, for example, when I tell people that I do acting, the only question that they tend to have is, oh, what would I know you from? Have you been in anything I would know? Are you famous? And when I say no to those questions, they're just like, oh, okay, then clearly it doesn't matter, which undermines everything that I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years of my life. And I have done some big projects. I've been on television, I've been in films, I've done adverts, I've done audio dramas, I've done some really exciting stuff. And I continue to get to do so. But people that are not in the industry, they judge you harshly because in their mind, the only thing that matters is fame and status. Things that I've never really given two shits about. I don't do content creation, for example, because I'm chasing fame. Do you know what I mean? I think like fame, to be honest, in this day and age, doesn't mean anything. Like fame in like the 20th century, for example, and before meant something. It was about respect and how you'd contributed something to society. Let's say like Henry Ford, for example, designing the Ford motor for the first time, or the Wright brothers with early air travel, stuff like that. Like you were known the world over for something amazing that you'd contributed to the world, and people admired you, respected you for your work. Now, I'm not saying that that element is not there anymore. It is, but there's levels to it. There's people that are truly appreciated for the work that they do, and then there's like people that are just famous for something, anything, and they're just known. Some people are famous for being famous, like they're a professional celebrity. This kind of idea, I feel like, really originated when Big Brother first became a thing in the early 2000s, and it kind of skyrocketed from there. And the advent of reality TV in the States, and then here in the UK as well, and the world over. Like now, people just become famous for being famous, and the online world has exacerbated this. It's made it really, really bad. It's pushed it into the forefront even more. Now anyone can become famous overnight, and some of these people really shouldn't. Some people deserve that shot, that attention, and some people have skyrocketed their careers in ways that you would never have imagined, and they really made something of it, and they should be proud of themselves. They've often the thing that they originally were famous for is forgotten because of the career they've paid for themselves, which I think is brilliant. I'm always of the camp that it's about your career, it's about what you're trying to do, it's about what you're trying to give to the world. These are the things that matter. I know these are just my opinions. I know loads of people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. That's what this is about. It's a good learning experience for everyone, I think. But the problem with it is that, like, if we continue with this obsession of relevancy and we attack people when they're not like constantly in that sphere of relevancy, then we're just attacking people for no reason. When you hear about things like cancel culture and people being attacked for questionable moral stuff like that, I can understand that. That makes sense. Putting people to task, when they're being hypocritical, let them know they're being hypocritical. When they're being mean or, just not very positive in some shape or form, like really negative or just harming people. Like, yeah, absolutely. Hold people accountable. Like, that's good. That's a positive thing. But when you're just attacking people for not being relevant anymore, by your standards, like I just feel like that's so brutal. Like you're just attacking other human beings who are trying to make a living, and that's all there is. That's it in a nutshell. And I've never quite understood that mentality. I'm sure a lot of people will argue, oh, it's just internet trolls, isn't it? Like, what more is to be said? It's trolling. Who cares? Well, I care. I've had people come into my streams before and attack me for not being successful or not being what they want me to be or whatever. And it's just mean. It's unnecessary. Be better, do better. Focus on spreading something positive to the world instead of attacking each other. I don't think I'll ever get on board with this idea of relevancy and people's obsession with it. Um, I do understand the benefits of being famous and how it can change someone's life. I've seen it. I've seen it happen to people I know, and it transformed their lives. And it is kind of crazy sometimes and kind of messed up how differently you get treated just because you're famous. Conversations that people would have with you completely change if they see that you're famous, because now there's opportunities to make money from you, there's opportunities to exploit you. Now you're a person of interest. Now you're suddenly catapulted into a level that you weren't on before. And the difficulty for me, I think, is that I just view us as all the same. The only difference is that some people got opportunities and some people didn't. you know um some people listening to this, watching this, might think that I come across as bitter. I'm really happy for people when they get that opportunity. I know how hard it is to get an opportunity. Lord knows I fight for opportunities and I rarely get them. If I do get them, I jump at them. I go for them. I hope for the best. I head first into it and just hope that something happens. But I never expect it. I never expect to be given an opportunity because I know how hard it is to work for one. And I think the only time I ever really get annoyed is, as I mentioned before, when someone gets given an opportunity at being like successful, famous, whatever, and it's for like a negative reason in some shape or form, or maybe they get given lots of like gifts and opportunities and they really don't deserve it. Like they're like a deplorable human being or something like that. And it just sucks to see that sometimes. Um, because my mind ironically doesn't go to myself first. I think about the people who I've seen working for so many years who just they're obscure. Like they rarely get seen by anyone. And I'm like, they deserve a chance. Why are they not given that chance? Why is this person who doesn't deserve it getting that chance? How is any of this fair? Sometimes I do think about myself. I think about why hasn't it happened for me? Will it ever happen for me? So on and so forth. And to be honest with you, the thing that my mind always goes back to when I'm done like feeling sorry for myself and worrying about what the world thinks, I think, what do I think? Where is my head at with all of this? Do I enjoy the content that I make? Am I happy with how far I've come with it? When I think back to when I first started doing this versus now, my confidence has grown as a person. I'm not afraid to take the risks and the chances anymore. I don't worry about what people think or how things might go. I Every time there's an opportunity, I just think, fuck it, let's just try. Worst that can happen is that you get rejected or they say no or whatever. If that's the worst that can happen, why aren't we going for opportunities every single time? Why aren't we trying? To put like a final bow on the whole relevancy thing, if you find yourself stuck in that spiral, my advice to you would be to get back to basics. As I mentioned earlier, look at the things that you love and that you want to do and why you started doing this in the first place. Really review that. If all you care about is money and fame and status, it's going to be a sad existence. It just is. We've seen this time and time again. Us spectators looking at the world of Hollywood, the world of celebs, and seeing how catastrophic their lives can be at times. It's especially bad when people focus on the wrong things. When all they care about is like award shows and parties and this couple being with person or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like there's stuff that doesn't matter. Like this obsession with celebs and celeb culture is something I'll never quite understand. Um, Even like the term fanatic, I can understand a love of something, an appreciation of something, but like when you meet people, they're just people. Like I met Youngblood the other day in my local bar, and I remember just looking at him, and at first I didn't realize it was him, and I kept looking at him. And the funny thing I've often found with famous people when I meet them is that I think I know them from somewhere, like that they're a friend from years ago, and I'm like, where do I know you from? Then it clicked who it was, and I was like, oh, it's him. Oh, that's cool. And I go back to drinking my pint. I'm just on a side note, I was not in a good place mentally. I was there, to be honest, just to have a good drink with my friends and just forget about life. Um, but I thought it was cool. This occasion, I didn't jump out and have a drink with him. I should have. I really wished I did. And then got a picture and stuff. I could have networked with him, but there's two reasons I didn't. One, I just didn't go for it because I wasn't in the right headspace. I made sure other friends who were shy met him and stuff, and I introduced myself and I asked about what he was doing and stuff. And really, really nice guy, by the way. Just on a side note, lovely man. But the other reason why I didn't is that people, I'm sure, all the time come up to these people and ask them, "Hey, can you help me with this? Hey, can you help me with that?" And I never really wanted to be that person. Um, because I just feel like maybe you should earn it. I don't know. But then if you never try, you never know. Maybe if I'd have said something, he might have been like, "Cool, I'll keep you in mind. Let's do something together." You know, like always take the opportunity. That's the lesson there. Always take the opportunity. Go for it because you never know what could happen, and you never know what you're what you're going to miss out on, and you don't want to sit and live with the regret. So there it is. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this show. I don't know how we got to that point, by the way, but I hope you had some fun with it. I hope it got you thinking. Let me know if there's any particular topics you want me to cover. Um, I'm looking to do a lot more bonus shows, so this isn't an official episode, but I'll be doing more of these bonus episodes. So make sure to check them out. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and listening. Really appreciate it. Thanks for subscribing. And please make sure you leave comments and reviews if you like the show. And yeah, just most importantly, be safe, be well, and make sure that you don't get stuck in the spiral of relevancy. Take care.